Hello class, hello Dr. Springston. In this video, I'm going to reflect on the story that I told in the first video, Saddle Shoes and Suntan Oil, my experience of adolescence in high school. And we'll do this via three theories, behavioral theory, attachment theory, and family systems. So as I said in my video story, I have a large, very emotionally consistent family. So I'm talking about my mom and my dad, two sets of grandparents, and my Aunt Ramona and Uncle Charles that I lived with every summer. My family is Italian American. They had strong traditional values, a great work ethic, excellent educations, and there were expectations. And I think I mentioned that of both my brother and myself working in the family businesses. Though there were absolutely lots of fun, great holiday memories. And I had really four sets of parents. My biological parents that I lived with during the week, and then my grandparents. I alternated weekends at their houses, and then in the summer in Las Vegas in the hotel with Charles and Ramona. Ramona had a PhD in English, and I used to grade her papers. She taught summer school, and I think that influenced me to major in English, and then I became a high school English teacher. So I know a lot about adolescence, actually. I have two children, and I have 5 grandchildren, so that even more information about adolescence. So as far as family systems theory would go, when you would say, emotionally, all the family members share the same emotional skin, that was definitely true in my family. There was no alcoholism, no drug addiction, no mental illness, and everybody lived to a very ripe old age. Also, my friends told me this, and I never thought about it, but there were no people who worried in my family, and I'm not a worrier, and that's where that must have come from. So we definitely all influenced each other. Everybody was creative. My Aunt Ramona majored in theater. My mother was a professional dancer. Family members spoke 2 or 3 languages. My grandmother was an amazing cook and baker. And that has all influenced me. So it was a really tight family system that worked very well together. And as the children grew and changed, that was not challenging for the adults. That was expected, and they were grateful for us. Behaviorally, I would have to say operant conditioning was the method that the school system used, and parents, when I was going to school, were very aligned with teachers and administration. Nobody was ever at odds that I recall, certainly not if you sent your children to private school, and I went to private school, both grade school and high school. And I went to Catholic undergrad, Loyola. But as far as grade school and high school go, parents were completely supportive of what teachers and administration did. And it was definitely operant conditioning. Good behavior was rewarded and bad behavior was not acceptable. So when I talk in the story about the 3 girls, the clique, whose marijuana was discovered in their lockers, I'll never forget that day. They returned to school the next year, which would have been our senior year. That happened in our junior year, at the end of our junior year. But their lives were very different at school, and I suspect at home. There was also another girl that I didn't mention, who was queen of the senior prom. And empire dresses were in style, but she was pregnant. And I think it was the sisters discovered it towards the end of our senior year. So she graduated, but other classmates were not kind to her about it. I mean, it was an expectation at that high school, only 400 girls, an all girls high school, 4-year school, that you were going to graduate and go to college. No one was going to become pregnant or smoke marijuana or any of those things. So if the school, the administration and teachers didn't correct or punish those who strayed, certainly peers did it. They would ostracize people, essentially, is what would happen. So bad behavior was not tolerated, and so there we have operant conditioning at its best. It worked for me. And lastly, let's touch on attachment theory. So I've kind of touched on it already through family systems, but my brother and I were the only grandchildren for a number of years. There's probably, I think, 11 or 12 years between my brother, myself, and my cousins. So we were doted on. I mean, there are endless photographs of my grandmother carrying me around, and my dad and my mom. And so I'm 12 year and a half older than my brother. So and my brother and I are close, not only in age, but we're close emotionally. And yeah, we were attached. I mean, I have a feeling that somebody was always picking us up and cuddling us. And as that attachment theory tells us, if you attach well, you're able then to go out into the unknown because you have a safe place to come back to. So both my brother and I were very adventurous, and we traveled by ourselves. We went off with friends by ourselves when we were in high school, and did overnights and that sort of thing. But we always were safe. We felt safe. We could explore because we always had this really strong, enveloping, nurturing family to come back to, and because we were attached very, very well as children. So those are my reflections on my story, saddle shoes and suntan oil. I think you can see in the story that I've hit the points of physical, emotional, cognitive, and social. That this cognitively, we were on a college track. I mentioned going to Sister Mary Rachel's Shakespeare class. Emotionally, yeah, I had this wonderful, upbeat, fun, experience. Physically, I matured really early. I had no physical illnesses. I mentioned my 18-inch waist. I had no trouble attracting boys, but they weren't, the center of my universe for sure, because my family, was a lot more interesting, was a lot more fun, and could offer me a lot more. So this is the first part of video number 2. So in the second part of this video, we'll go over questions about counseling adolescents. And I have some really strong feelings about that. So we'll talk about that in just a minute.